All right, we're cruising right along, and now we are in section 5. So at the top of your notes, make sure that it says Chapter 3, Section 5, and this is equations, tables, and graphs. Now, the good thing is you've done some of this already, so today is just basically getting you involved in practicing these 3 different ways to represent data. In fact, that's exactly what our learning target is today, is you can, or say, I can generate different representations. I'm sorry, that kind of got blobbed together, of the same exact data. So we're going to have equations. And if you're given the equation, you should now be able to generate a table of values and then graph it. If you're given a table of values, then graph it and then see if you can come up with the equation. And finally, if you get the graph, then you can make a table and come up with the equation. All right, so 3 examples today. Let's dive on in, and here we go. All right, here's an example. It says that the height of an airplane is represented by h. So the height of h of an airplane, s seconds from takeoff, I kind of like that they're using obvious variables here, is h equals 12s. All right, so right now they are giving us the equation, okay? It says make a table and sketch a graph. So notice that S, even though you'd think you'd do it alphabetically, oh goodness sakes, S is going to be your input because this is seconds. So obviously at 0, we haven't started yet, you are not off the ground. All right, and then you can kind of start going here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. This is a situation where it would not make sense to input negative values because that just doesn't make sense. It's a real life situation. We're not talking about before it actually started taking off. All right, plugging in these values for S, you're just going to get 12, 24, 36, 48, and so on, okay? So there's some data points, and then it says go ahead and graph it. Now in this case, because none of my inputs or my outputs are ever going to be negative, I can look at my domain. This would never be a negative value. Neither would your range. So here's the deal. I am just going to make a graph out of this first quadrant in my coordinate system. S is kind of like your X value, your input. And so we're going to put that on the horizontal axis. And it's a good idea to label it so we know what it represents. That's seconds. And then H is my output. That's your Y value. That's my vertical axis. And so I am going to label this one this way. Now, as far as my scale here, I certainly am going to start like this. Make them look equally spaced. If we have graph paper, then you can certainly set up your intervals nicely. Since I'm going all the way up to 60 here, I am not going to use an interval of 1. I would probably, just for ease, since we're doing this in our notes, probably go by tens. 30, 40, 50, 60. Bingo. All right, and then go ahead and plot your points. 0, 0. 1 is 12, so eyeball that. 2 gives me 24. That's almost halfway. 3 is 36. 4 is 48. 5 is exactly at 60. Whoops. Okay, there you go. Should I connect them? I suppose you can. This would be, we haven't really talked about continuous kind of a thing, but this would be an example of one. Okay. All right. Next. So that was, I gave you the equation. You came up with a table and a graph. Let's look at another situation. This time we just have a table. Use this table to make a graph and see if you can come up with the equation. Well, here we go. So go ahead and sketch an XY coordinate system. Do it a little neater than my scribbles here. When X is 0, okay, so I don't move left or right at all, I get a -1. At +1, I'm at 0. At +2, my Y value is a 1. And at +3, I am at 2. Now, I'm not going to connect these right now because I'm only giving you 4 particular data points. But as you look at this, I need you to think about this as input, output, like the function machine you made the other day. When I put in a 0, I get -1. 1 gives me 0, 2 gives me 1, 3 gives me 2. Do you see some kind of pattern where if I'm trying to come up with the equation, what am I doing to x? Okay, so something else is going on here so that I end up with my y value. What are we doing to x to get here? Plug in a 1, I get 0. Plug in 2, I get 1. Plug in 3, you get 2. Can you see it? It looks like each time I got 1 less, I'm subtracting 1. That ends up being the equation. Okay, now there's no given specific formula right now that I can tell you. I need you to look at your input and see what's happening each time to your output, and then see that it works, or test it for every single set of information you've got. All right, so got a table, came up with the graph, came up with the equation. Last situation, you got the graph. See if you can come up with the table and the equation. Well, if we have the graph, the first thing, the easiest thing to do is take a look at these points and say, okay, I can come up with a table. Oh, I guess they're not using X and Y, are they? They're being smarty pants and using T and D. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like when T is 0, I end up here at this first line, but that's not a 1. Hold on. So at 0, you get an output of 2. Here, now, again, this is also going by intervals of 2. So this looks like the point 1 for T, and you get 4. Okay. This one, when I plug in a 2, when my input is 2, I get 6. And this one, which is right in between here, when T is a 3, I get 8. Now, this one's going to be a little trickier. Got the graph, got the table. The equation. So we usually say D, my output is I'm doing something to T. Well, I see a pattern here. I bet you could tell me what would happen if you plugged in a 4, because it looks like each time I'm going up by twosies, so I bet I get 10. Can you see what's happening? How do I mathematically get from 0 to 2? Well, you might think, well, I just add 2. Yeah, but then when I get to the next one, 1, now I get 4. That's not adding 2 rule. And when I plug in a 2, I get a 6. When I get a 3, I get an 8. 4, I get a 10. Keep looking at it. There's definitely something about it goes up by 2s. And this pattern here, when it jumps by 2s every single time, means that there's a multiplying by 2 in there somehow. Okay. Do you see it now? 2t plus 2. That one's a little trickier. And like I said, we're just going to give that a whirl and see how it goes. All right. So looking back now, if you get the equation, you should be able to generate a table and make a graph. If you get the table, you should be able to make the graph and come up with an equation. The last situation, if you get a graph, come up with the table and the equation. Getting the equation's the challenge part. So let's see if you put on your good old algebra eyes and see what comes up. Alrighty, your assignment, keep calm, is going to be in Schoology. So what I want you to do is now log in and check there for your assignment. As always, keep calm, good luck, and may the force be with you.